Hello again. I've decided to do a follow-up to my video about all the cowardly teaching union teachers who don't want to do their jobs properly. I figure I'm entitled to have another say on the matter because after my last video I received an absolute torrent of disgusting abuse and slander. So the first thing I want to say is I'm not in the slightest bit intimidated by this pathetic outburst. I don't know if it came entirely from teaching union teachers or from their supporters, but either way it was pathetic and disgraceful. You are a bunch of socialist cowards. You're scared of a cold. You shriek and throw tantrums as soon as you face the slightest bit of criticism or pressure. You're like adult toddlers. You cannot possibly intimidate anybody who has an ounce of self-respect. And the most pathetic thing is, most of you couldn't even think up your own insults. A lot of the abuse I received was just variations on a few themes. So how does that work then? Were you told what to say? Did you consult some sort of menu of options and choose your favourite slurs? I don't know, maybe you're being paid for this nonsense. Or maybe you think you're doing some kind of heroic public service. My advice to you would be, get some self-respect. Have you really got nothing better to do with your time than join a pile-on and repeat a bunch of nasty little lies at someone you don't know? Seriously, get some self-respect. Try to do something creative or useful. Try to do something genuinely kind and gentle, since that's what you keep saying you are. Anyway, some of the most bizarre comments were about how my delivery job is allegedly nowhere near as dangerous as being in a room with 30 children. I'm quoting here, being in a room with 30 children. Guys, listen to yourselves. You're defining being in a room with 30 children as some kind of grave danger. Maybe you're in the wrong job, or maybe you've lost your minds. It's a virus with an average age of death of around 82. It's pretty much harmless to young and healthy folk. Most people who get the virus don't even have any symptoms. If you look at the stats from regions that remained open, where there were no lockdowns or mask mandates, it's been pretty much a normal year for mortality compared to previous years. What you're doing is you're making it sound like not catching a cold is suddenly the only thing in the universe that matters. And you're making it sound like teachers are the only people who face any risks. You're completely obsessed. For the record, there are other people out there who are taking risks, all sorts of risks. What about shop workers, carers, driving instructors? What about delivery drivers? A lot of the abuse that was directed at me was just plain old snobbery about my job. But some people seem to think that my job is some kind of stroll in the park. Believe me, driving around for 7 hours straight in the freezing cold on ice-strewn streets, rushing around doing 40 or 50 deliveries, often getting soaked to the bone, is not completely without risk. And by the way, I don't just drop parcels on people's doorsteps. I hand over multiple food packages to people face to face. Often their kids will come running down the corridor to help take the food. Sometimes I go into people's kitchens if they need a hand unpacking the food. And there are about 8 members of staff in the shop, plus scores of customers who come in and out every night. And I've been doing this most nights since day one of the pandemic. And every time I've had the opportunity, I've gone to a cafe in the morning to get a bacon sandwich and a coffee. My point is, I don't mind doing my job and carrying on as normal, and nor should you mind. I'm not pretending to have a high-risk job. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't pretend that working in a school is a high-risk job. You should pull yourself together and get on with it. You need to work on your attitude. And don't give me this rubbish about how hard you're working from home. It's not the same, and you know it. The kids aren't getting the same quality of education, and you know it. The kids aren't getting the social interaction that they need, and you know it. And you also know that parents need to be able to send their kids to school so they themselves can go out to work. Stop being a bunch of disingenuous little cowards. Personally, I'm glad I've been able to work since the start of the pandemic. I'm glad I've been able to make myself useful. My attitude was that healthy people had a responsibility to carry on working, to keep the country going, so we could be in a position to help vulnerable people. My attitude was that herd immunity was the best way to get vulnerable people out of hiding as soon as possible. On what planet does this make me selfish? Speaking of selfishness, I would like to know what happened in schools last Monday. My question to you teaching union teachers is, did you blackmail the government? The day before the schools reopened, Boris Johnson was saying that schools were safe. Then suddenly he did a massive U-turn and he sent the entire country into lockdown. Did you apply pressure to him or to the heads of your schools? I've been hearing stories about teachers threatening to hand in their notice. Did you cause chaos on Monday? My suspicion is that when Boris sent us back into the latest national lockdown, he capitulated to the teaching unions. He probably figured that he couldn't keep the schools open if the teaching unions were causing chaos, and he couldn't keep the country out of lockdown while working people weren't able to send their kids to school as usual. Actually, let me rephrase that. He could have tried to keep the schools open, and he could have tried to keep the economy open without the schools. But either way, an almighty shambles was brewing, and presumably he didn't want it on his watch. I think he locked the whole country up to avoid any embarrassment for himself. What a massive coward. And what an absolute disgrace for the cowardly teaching unions. The Corona Panic debacle is a crime against humanity, an atrocity. People's livelihoods are being destroyed. People's lives are being destroyed. And literally too, people are dying. Not to mention the West is dying. Our way of life is dying. Our rights are being steamrolled by lunacy and cowardice. And what about the children? Does anyone actually care about these kids? Their futures are being trashed. And right now, they're being tormented by enforced masks and social distancing. Kids are developing. They need normal social interaction. Cowardly adults are tormenting these children. Anyone who has contributed to the Corona Panic debacle in any way should be thoroughly ashamed. I'm not just talking about teaching union teachers. I'm also talking about shrieking socialists throughout the public sector, the NHS, academia, the media, the police and other institutions in Britain. At the start of the Corona Panic debacle in early March, Boris tried to pursue a herd immunity strategy, or at least that was the impression he gave. It was certainly the conclusion that the media drew. But Boris soon backed away from herd immunity when millions of socialists, and a few conservatives too, started shrieking in unison, calling him a butcher and a murderer. Ever since then, we've all been trapped in this ludicrous effort to do whatever the shrieking socialists think we need to do to suppress COVID-19, whatever the costs. Don't get me wrong, I'm not exonerating Boris. Personally, I think he should be put on trial for his role in the Corona Panic debacle. But I want to say to Britain's shrieking socialists, people are wising up to you now. People are wising up to the fact that you think protecting yourselves is more important than protecting the livelihoods, the lives and the rights of the wider public, including the rights of children. People are wising up to the fact that you keep pressuring our elected government into enacting tyrannical measures. People are not buying all this stay home, stay safe claptrap anymore. People are realising that the best way for them to stay safe is to carry on as normal, because your so-called new normal is an atrocity. People want this obsessive COVID-19 testing regime to be rolled back. People want the NHS to stop sending healthy staff home to quarantine. People want the NHS to at least try to provide normal healthcare. People want to stop being treated like criminals without fair trial, being guilty of maybe having a cold. People want to stop being required to wear humiliating face masks, the same masks that the authorities were telling us were unnecessary earlier in 2019. People want their kids to stop being tormented. People want their rights back. They want their freedom back. And believe me, we will take our freedom back.